I got off the plane at the Mexico City airport with my knees numb after 9 hours of flight, and my hands still clutching a small velvet box that held my mother's necklace. I had not traveled abroad in years. Not since James left. But Ethan insisted. "It would not be the same without you, Mom," he told me. "You're still family, you still are." That word kept turning in my head throughout the whole trip. I had not been officially invited to. Ashley's birthday, Mexico City. No formal email. No itinerary, only a vague promise from my son that I was welcome. For him, perhaps that was enough. For me, it was not in a taxi on the way to the hotel. I wrote to Ashley, "Dear, I just arrived. At what time is dinner tonight?" I kept it cheerful, warm, the way a mother is expected to. There was no answer. I checked in at a hotel overlooking the Panuco River. I unpacked the suitcase calmly and placed the fine silver necklace with a turquoise stone in the center on the desk. It had belonged to my mother. She used to wear it at every Christmas dinner and anniversary. Had the clasp restored last month. I thought Ashley would find it elegant. Still, no response. I slid my finger across the phone screen. Ashley had posted a story 2 hours earlier. A photo of a latte in a cafe not far from where I was. The caption read, "Last details for tonight. I can't wait for it to be time." Details for a dinner to which I had not even been given the address. I took off my shoes and sat at the edge of the bed. The air conditioner hummed softly. I looked at my phone, waiting for the 3 little dots of typing to appear, but nothing. At 5, I wrote to Ethan only, just confirming. "What is the address of the dinner?" He answered in less than a minute. "Right, Casa del Sol at 7. See you there." No apology. No mention of the silence, just 1 hour in one place. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and put the necklace back in its box. I took my purse and went down to the car waiting for me. Casa del Sol shone with golden lights when I crossed the gate into its courtyard. The cobblestones were cool beneath my heels. I was wearing a navy blue silk dress, one that James had always loved, and earrings that Ashley once complimented. Hoping perhaps naively for a moment of harmony. The mater d' greeted me with a polite nod. "Good evening, madam." "Name, Solis," I said. "Margaret Solis. I'm with the group." "Ramirez Solis." He checked the list and blinked. "I see a table for 12. But there's no one with that name." I looked past him. There they were, Ethan, Ashley, her parents, her sisters, even 2 college friends I had once welcomed for Day of the Dead, all seated at a spectacular table under a bower covered in bougainvillea, lit by floating candles and decorated with white carnations. It was the intimate birthday dinner before the big formal event with guests and sponsors. The next day, I would count 11 people, 11 chairs. Still, I approached. Ethan looked up, surprised but without urgency in his eyes. Only a faint smile. "Mom, you came." Ashley did not stand up. She took a sip of her wine and gave a quick wave. "Oh," she said lightly, "I think I miscounted." How silly of me. No one laughed, not openly, but I felt the murmur of amusement ripple along the table. A waiter appeared with a folding chair. I shook my head. "No need," I said quietly. "I won't stay long." I placed the velvet box at the corner of the table beside the untouched breadbasket and gave Ethan a long look. Then I turned to Ashley. "Happy birthday," I said. She smiled as if she did not perceive the pain behind my words. I turned around before they could respond. My heels echoing against the cobblestones, each step measured and silent. Behind me, champagne glasses clinked. I did not look back. In an alley next to the restaurant, I stopped at the edge of a fountain and touched the necklace still in my purse. It had never reached her neck. I took out my phone. A name in my contacts that had not changed in 20 years. I dialed, let it ring, and said only 3 words when they answered. "I need access." Back in my room, I unfastened the necklace and took off the silk dress, folding it carefully before placing it on a chair. The room was too quiet. I did not turn on the television. Instead, I took out the black folder I always carried on my trips, not out of habit, but out of memory. Inside were laminated pages, spreadsheets, schedules of past events, seating plans for the third wedding of an oil heiress, flower palettes for a Nobel dinner, wine pairings for a millionaire's retirement in San Miguel de Allende. I leafed through them slowly, letting the names speak for me. They were nights no one dared to ruin because I had planned them. I pulled a folded letter from the back pocket. It was from Carolyn Turner, former operations director of Flavors of Heaven, a catering company in Mexico City. She had been my intern in Monterey years ago. Nervous, sharp, quick with logistics, I trained her, guided her, recommended her for the position in the capital. I searched for the company profile on my phone. Indeed, Flavors of Heaven was listed as the official provider of the grand birthday event. The next day, March 19th, I opened their website and reviewed the emergency procedures. If the main contact did not respond, the system defaulted to the verified secondary contact. I typed my old access credentials. The platform let me in. There it was under the March 19th reservation for the birthday of a Ramirez. The emergency contact was still M. Solis, senior contingency advisor. They had not deleted me. They had used my reputation, my relationships with suppliers, my legacy, and thought I would sit in a folding chair and pretend not to notice. I tapped the supplier list, the florist, the quartet, the wine distributor, all still partners. All familiar. Click, edit access. Then I took a blank sheet from the folder and began to write. Line by line, I had always believed in brevity in my work. The fewer words you needed to control a room, the more power you adopt. By midnight, the message was written, printed, and signed. I went down to the concierge and asked to use the fax. The young woman at the counter hesitated when she took the paper but said nothing. Gave her 3 numbers, 1 for catering, 1 for the florist, 1 for the musicians. The phrase was clear, final, emotionless. Please cancel the services for March 19th at Casa del Sol. Authority, emergency contact. She sent the faxes, stapled the confirmation receipts, and placed them in an envelope. Impeccable. I put it in my purse and went back to my room. I did not call Ethan. Did not need to. He had chosen comfort over kindness. He knew they had not planned for me, that they had not reserved a place, that they did not want me at that table. Still, he let me cross the ocean. He let me arrive at a dinner where there was no chair, no name, no welcome. They wanted a spectacle. They would have one. Lay back on the bed and let the silence wrap around me like silk. Somewhere in the city, Ashley was probably retouching her lipstick, checking her guest list, posing under candlelight with borrowed elegance. But tomorrow, the messages would begin to arrive. A florist with no delivery confirmation. A violinist confused by a last-minute cancellation. A wine distributor refunding the payment. I imagine the puzzle calls, the unanswered emails, the uncertainty blooming hours before the first guest arrived, the gaps that would appear in the seams of her perfect night. It would start as a whisper, a pause, a look from an employee with no instructions, and it would end in silence, not mine, theirs. The next night, the courtyard of Casa del Sol glowed with candles and tablecloths, ready for Ashley's grand birthday celebration. But something was wrong from the start. At 7:45 p.m. Not even the first glass of wine had been served. The sommelier had vanished, replaced by a young, nervous waiter who kept glancing at his watch. Ashley raised her hand sharply. "Where is the Cabernet from Valle de Guadalupe?" she asked. He stammered and slipped down the hallway, never to return. The quartet in the corner finished their opening sonata. They stood up without a word. One packed his cello into its case. Another rolled up. The cables quickly. No encore. No acknowledgement. The guests began murmuring. I imagined Ashley's smile tightening, her voice falling to that hiss I knew so well. This is unacceptable. Where's the coordinator? But there was none. The woman they had trusted for years, silently, without thanks, was upstairs in a cotton robe drinking hibiscus tea, letting the night collapse upon them. In Casa del Sol's kitchen. The chef read my note again. The cancellation had reached him hours earlier. And only out of loyalty to Caroline's memory had he waited, but without payment confirmation, without management authorization, and with growing unease. He made the final decision. The cake, a 3-tier sponge with hazelnuts and powdered sugar, was stored in the cold chamber. When Ashley asked to see it, the pastry chef pretended not to know what she was talking about. Ethan stood up and pulled out his phone. I saw him from my balcony. He began to dial, then stopped. His posture changed. His shoulders dropped. Even from that distance, I knew the exact moment he understood. The details, the timing, the vanishing stuff, it was no accident. It was precision. His face paled as he turned slowly toward the table. His lips pressed together. He knew. At last. He knew. The clinking of forks against empty plates gave way to murmurs and restless movements. The guests looked at their watches, exchanging glances between curiosity and irritation. Then Beatrice Marshall, dressed in golden sequins and always the first to turn boredom into a weapon, stood up with a theatrical gesture. "Is this part of the show?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. "Because, frankly, it feels amateur." Ashley's face flushed, not from the wine. She rose quickly, trying to regain control. "It's just a small delay," she announced, her voice tight. "It's coming." But Beatrice wasn't finished. "I've been to 5 of your events, Ashley. This is the first where the staff looks more nervous than the guests." She sat down with a heavy sigh. Loud enough for everyone to notice. Then Ashley's father, Mr. Ramirez, pushed back his chair and stormed toward the service hallway. Minutes later, he returned, followed by the venue manager. The manager adjusted his tie, gave a brief bow, and spoke in Spanish so everyone would understand. "We deeply regret the interruption," he said. "The confusion comes from a formal cancellation we received this morning for this event." Ashley blinked. "What cancellation?" The manager opened his folder and pointed to a document. It was sent by fax with full authority from the registered emergency contact, a certain Margaret Salas. For a second, no one moved. All eyes turned to Ethan. He remained seated, elbows on the table, fingers pressed under his chin. His voice came out low but clear. "My mother used to plan international high-security, high-profile events. She trained half of the suppliers in the city. Her name was still in the system." There was a pause while the weight of that confession settled over the table. "She had the right," he said at last, lifting his gaze toward Ashley. "I didn't remove her from the system because I didn't think it was necessary." And with that, the applause inside Ashley's head went silent. They had not always been cruel, only careless with me. Careless. As people become when they know you'll always be there, that you'll always pay the bill, that you'll always stay quiet to keep the peace. I remember the first time Ashley called me traditional. With that tense little smile. It was at her engagement party I offered to organize. Something simple, close friends. A garden lunch with music, but she said, "Thanks, but your style is more like Mom's." She stretched the word as if it meant ordinary. She hired a luxury planner and sat me behind a floral arrangement, so large I couldn't see half the toast. Then came the years of polite distance. She called when they needed to remodel the house, a loan for a car, tuition for her sister's design course. Each time, her voice was pure charm until the transfer went through. Then silence. No thank you note. No visit. Ethan wasn't better. When James died, I set aside part of my retirement fund for something meaningful, maybe travel. A greenhouse. Ethan borrowed it for a project, a can't-miss bistro in Quereq Taro. He showed me the blueprints, called me his first investor, even brought me an apron signed by the chef. The place closed in 9 months. He never mentioned the money again. And I let it go because that's what I did. I let things go. But that night, as the news spread from table to table that the birthday dinner had collapsed under my silent command, I felt no resentment. I felt awake. I had spent years teaching others how to make people feel special, how to create tables where everyone had a seat. They had treated me like a folding chair, something you could bring out at the last minute or forget entirely. It wasn't about revenge. It was about stepping out from under the tablecloth they had used to cover me. I didn't need to raise my voice. I finally raised myself, and I was only beginning. 2 weeks after returning to Monterey, I found a small envelope among the bills and supermarket flyers. The handwriting was familiar, rounded, careful, as if trying too hard to be sweet. It was from Ashley. Inside, there was a belated birthday card filled with flowers and golden letters. I opened it slowly, half expecting an apology. Instead, a 100 peso gift card for a coffee shop fell out. And above the printed message, "Have a happy day," someone had written. "Thanks for coming." That was all. No mention of the missing chair. No mention of the canceled dinner disaster. No acknowledgement of what we all knew had happened in that candlelit courtyard. Just 100 pesos for a coffee and a phrase so empty it echoed. I laughed louder than I had in months. The cards stayed in the corner of the kitchen counter while I pulled out a thick folder labeled Living Flavors Foundation. Inside were the signed transfer papers. I moved the rest of James's estate, every last peso, into a charitable trust to support culinary students, the ones who reminded me of my old interns, the ones who called me Donna Margaret with respect in their voices, not with a smirk. The trust would fund scholarships, internships, and grants for small culinary businesses led by women over 50. Board would have 5 members. I would preside over it for the rest of my days. Ethan wasn't even on the list of alternates. He never asked about the trust. Assumed he would eventually get it, as if the right came by birth and not by a relationship built with care. He would discover it in silence. The lawyers would explain it when the time came, when the documents were filed and the balances no longer mentioned his name. Let him wonder how a woman who wasn't invited to the table ended up taking the table with her, and the silverware and the wine list and every single chair. It all began with a whisper on social media, a post from one of Ashley's guests, a fashion columnist who had been sharing her trip to Mexico City in real time. "The most disastrous birthday in Mexico City's history," she wrote. The staff vanished. No wine, no cake, no hostess, no class. Within 24 hours, the post had more than 40,000 likes. Comments came in from food critics, former colleagues, even some of my old collaborators. Some called it karma, others sabotage. Ashley's name became a trending topic for all the wrong reasons. Her blog once, an altar to effortless elegance, lost 3 sponsors in a week. She posted a cryptic message about unexpected interruptions and then went silent. I thought that would be the end of it. Then, on a rainy afternoon, someone knocked on my door. Ethan. He looked older, not tired. Ashamed. He stood there in a thin jacket without an umbrella, his hair wet, stuck to his forehead. "Mom," he said, "can I come in?" I didn't answer. I just stepped aside and let him drip onto the wooden floor. He sat at the table where I had once helped him memorize flashcards, where he had signed his first loan papers. Now he stared at the steam rising from the cup I gave him, as if unsure he deserved to touch it. "I know what you did," he said. "The trust, the dinner, everything." I said nothing. "Why did you do this to us?" I didn't look up. I only took my warm planner, filled with tabs and years of names and notes. I opened it to the current week and pointed to the bottom of the page. Under family, it was blank, no names, no initials, just an empty line. Ethan looked at it, his lips parted as if to speak, but I closed the planner before he could find the words. Then I turned the page. The next one was already full. 5 color-coded columns. Foundation. Final interviews. Distribution of grants. Confirmed. Opening gala. Confirmed. Apprentices. All house. There was no place for him on the calendar, only forward. The dining room was simple. No chandeliers. No imported roses, no photographers chasing a brand mention, just the aroma of caramelized onions, roasted chicken with rosemary, and the laughter of people who had never asked me for a check. The apprentices 9 now had prepared the evening in secret. I wasn't supposed to lift a finger. That was their only rule. I had taught them about balance, restraint, how to plate with purpose, how to season with patience. That night, they gave it all back to me with a silent bow. When I entered, I stopped. The table was long, made of reclaimed pine, with mismatched chairs and hand-folded cloth napkins, and at the head chair carved with my name, embroidered with a linen sash. On my plate, there was a card that simply read Dona Margaret, braised lamb with lemon farro and herb yogurt. I laughed, then cried, then sat down. They served each dish as if it were sacred. One of them, Clara, raised her glass first, for the woman who fed more than mouths, who fed futures. I looked around women over 50 who had thought it was too late to start again, single parents learning to bake once more, a retired bus driver who now knew how to make patea shoes. They didn't ask who my husband had been. They didn't question my choices, only knew that I had said yes when others hadn't. Raised my glass in response. They excluded me from one dinner, I said firmly. So I built 100 more without them. We toasted no speeches, no photographers, only the sound of forks striking joy. Later, when the dishes were washed and the last light went out, I stayed a moment alone at the edge of the empty table. It was the same silence I had once feared, but now it felt earned whole because I had learned something no folding chair could ever teach me. The only chair that matters is the one you give yourself. M.